Abuja was built with a vision to be a city that represents unity, excellence, and a model for Nigeria's development. But as we look around today, we see a city at a crossroads. The question is, are we truly building the Abuja of the future? Or are we simply managing its decline? Today, I sit down with Kazeem Sanusi, a renowned expert in sustainable and resilient urban systems, infrastructure, and economic development. Together, we'll unpack the challenges facing the FCT and, more importantly, explore solutions to drive lasting progress. This isn't just a conversation, it's a call to action for leaders, policymakers, and every citizen invested in Abuja's future. Hello, Kazeem.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to have you joining me on this conversation.
Thank you.
I have had the FCT on my mind a lot lately because I was in the FCT when we had the End Bad Governance, protest. I know you're quite vast when it comes to the knowledge about the FCT. I actually met you back in 2011.
Yes.
And this was at the retreat for the STDA kickoff in Mina in 2011.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken at the time, you were working as a special advisor to the Minister of State, FCT. Olajumoke Akinjide, I believe.
Yes.
So during that retreat, a lot of stuff came up, obviously. This was an effort to really position the STDAs properly.
Yes.
But before we go into the meat of our conversation, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Well, Kazeem Sanusi, I'm the Chief Responsibility Officer for DFSP Africa. DFSP Africa is operational in Nigeria and Rwanda. We're into spatial planning, institutional planning, large estates planning, transport, and I'll say large estates in the sense of free trade zones, green economic zones, and all that. So that's what we do. And then also we look at spatial mapping as it impacts and the value for security analysis and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You and I have gotten into conversations so many times because obviously we work together. And the one thing you've said so many times about societies or about systems is the fact that we need to create an anti-fragile system.
Absolutely.
Tell me, what do you mean when you talk about an anti-fragile system?
Great. So typically there is no system unless you're deliberate. Every system tends to weaken over time and tends to disintegrate. So if you start from the point of design and you say we've designed a system and we just leave it, no monitoring, no guidance, no ensuring that all the key parameters are aligned all the time, the system is going to disintegrate. It will fail. Right. Over time, human errors, institutional lapses, policy gaps, policies not matching realities, and the system would eventually begin to weaken. And that's why countries who have managed to build systems or institutions, they're always looking, tinkering, updating, and all of that, which is the gap that we seem to have here. We treat it as a one-time activity. We've designed this office, we've set up this office, and that's it. So, and that's why we're unable to lock down all of this. And then, of course, you then also begin to look at what is the value that each area of the system is bringing to the table, and without us integrating. So we have too many silos. Then you cannot build a structure and have different pillars rising to the sky. At every point in time, we should look at developing systems or countries or cities as we're building a house. You cannot raise columns indefinitely. You have to keep tying them together. So at what points are we integrating these many silos of beautiful things that our governments and leaders claim to be doing. So that's where the fragility comes in, because by the time your columns begin to tear, you can no longer tie your systems and its values together. And we have a lot of values that are happening, that have been happening historically, but yet we're traveling in the direction of a fragile state.
Wow.
Yes.
So as opposed to anti-fragile.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you were talking there, you used the analogy of building.
Yes.
And that ever so often you need to ask yourself, are we integrating? Are we moving together?
Yes.
And while you said that, I just remember the incidents, the 9/11 incidents, and how post 9/11, the Homeland, the Department for Homeland Security was created.
Absolutely.
And that is coming from, seeing that there was a gap in their system.
Exactly.
Because they had systems that were not talking to one another. Okay? Yeah. And that led to some kind of action taken.
Absolutely.
So tell us, because obviously if we look at the FCT as a system, or should I say Abuja, as a system with subsystems, okay?
Yes.
Tell us about the FCT, especially from a developmental perspective.
Okay, so this is a beautiful subject. It's a subject that evokes a lot of emotions, and coming from a development background, urban planning background, and also having worked within the FCT as a senior social assistant, technical and strategy, and then also supporting the FCT from UK aid program, UK NIAF too. We know the FCT like the back of our hands. So you have the Federal Capital Territory, all right? Then within the Federal Capital Territory, we have 6 area councils, which are the same as local government areas. Now, let me step back a bit. The Federal Capital Territory, internally, we joke that this is the only state, is a ministry state. Federal Capital Territory Administration is a ministry state, and the only state where the president is the president's own state, which means that but the president cannot be president as well as governor of FCT. So we have minister and minister of state acting in the president's stead. And that's why the minister and the minister of state, FCT, enjoy a lot of support from the president. Because ideally, the president's primary residence, primary office, primary responsibility is the FCT. And the National Assembly also has that priority, gives that priority to any matters of the FCT. So that tells us about the FCT. Now, the FCT, we step into the FCT, we have 6 area councils, which are like the local government areas in other states. 6 area councils, and then from within the 6 area councils, we have the Federal Capital City. Now, Federal Capital Territory, then Federal Capital City. Federal Capital City is the part that we see. That's the different phases of development that has happened. Phase 1, phase 2, STDA being STI, Satellite Towns Department, or STDA, that back and forth has put a lot of the ability to budget heavily or to attract a lot of developmental funds to the satellite towns and development and area councils has been a challenge over time, which has led to this huge development disparity, imbalance that we see between the Federal Capital City and then the satellite towns and area councils of the FCT. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, you just talked about the disparity between the Federal Capital City and the area councils or satellite towns, if you like. Now, having even said that, Abuja was designed to be a model city.
Yeah.
In other words, Abuja should be our own Dubai, so to speak. But with the way things have gone, the trajectory, would you say it is living up to that expectation?
Short answer, no. So the FCT has not evolved the way a national capital city of the status of Nigeria, the giant of Africa, should have evolved.
Right.
You know, and so we have apart from the development disparity, you know, which has introduced a lot of slums, a lot of unsightly development within the FCT's space. You know, we also have the growth of ungoverned spaces. Ungoverned spaces is not really only land. Ungoverned spaces could also be in terms of infrastructure. So we use that the term as well. So you have the disparity in health infrastructure, in sewage infrastructure, in utilities infrastructure across the city. So you cannot say that it has lived up to that. But of course, the master plan, which we still always try to say we're trying to protect, the master plan is dated. Where is the review? I know we tried to do some review in 2014 and we submitted some recommendations to the FCT, you know. So it needs to be reviewed and we need to take a different approach to the master plan, fine-tuning it. The master plan is, so it's a lot of years ago that it was done. The dynamics have changed. Population projection on the master plan for, I think, up to 2020, was up to about 3.1 million people, you know, from the master plan, if I recall the figures clearly. But now, as at 2014, we were already looking at FCT suspectedly carrying about 6 million people.
Right.
You know, having about 6 million daytime population as at 2014. You know, from some basic research and studies that we did. So it shows that we need to revisit, right. You know, let's look at what is the foundational document that we claim or that we want to leverage on. We need to look at that foundational document. Does it still speak to our realities? You know, but in terms of living up to its design objective as a model city, current dynamics and realities have not put FCT in that space. FCT cannot claim to be a model city.
Wow.
Yeah.
You talked about how the Abuja plan is outdated. And I know that in recent times that there has been some demolition or intent to demolish. Obviously, that must be coming from the fact that people have built where they should not have built. So where it is not a huge risk, say the building that has been erected, is there an alternative to demolition? Is what I'm trying to ask really very quickly.
Yes, so the need to demolish or to demolish or not to demolish,
yes,
should follow some certain checklists. So government may need to put proper checklists in place. What impact does it have on the master plan? What unmitigatable impact does it have? The deviation. Then, but the act of deviating from the master plan means that by default you lose ownership of that asset.
Right.
It becomes, so if it's an economic asset, for instance, let's look at something like let's say a building that carries the status of maybe the World Trade Center in Abuja now.
Okay.
Is discovered to have contravened the master plan. That millions of dollars have been sunk into that structure.
Do we demolish it?
Do we demolish it? No. The government should take ownership. Anything that has economic value, government takes ownership. And the government can now appropriate it as a wish. And government can appropriate it to cover the costs of adapting the master plan to accommodate that. You know, but then, so the people who built it may have first right of refusal, but you're coming to pay economic value. We're discounting, if you've spent $100 million to put the structure up, we're telling you that as at the point we've taken it, we just recognize you as the one who put it up. We did not recognize your investment. and government is selling it for $100 million. So, but you have first right of refusal. So if you really want to hold on to it, go and look for it. So the next time you will not contravene.
Absolutely.
You know, so demolition is not really development. There might be, if it's not compulsory, some of us
if
are.
It's not going to cause any long-term damage.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And we can we refrain from saying some things on in media and all. There's so many key structures in the FCT that are totally not on the master plan.
Right. Right. So
and
the question is,
we've attacked, removed our sites from them.
Right.
Some of them are religious structures.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying. Are we just going to go and demolish everything?
Yes.
Okay.
So by default, human beings will take the path of least resistance. So if we require you to work within the Federal Capital City to support as drivers, security, maid, cook, chef, teachers, and all of that in the schools. And you cannot afford to live in the formalized communities here, right? And there are informal communities growing organically.
Yes.
You take the path of least resistance because you cannot, and because there is also no transport system to ferry you in and out effortlessly, you know. So if you go around the city in the evenings, you see this train that people go through, trying to get vehicles to go to all these satellite towns and area councils. So people will naturally gravitate to the informal communities, even though there are no services, no utilities, or poor utilities. Some of them have power and all that, but path of least resistance. So what do we need to do? We need to begin to look at the reality of each informal settlement and balance it with land use planning, what has been done, how they happen to be there, the history, what structures have been evolved, social and economic structures have evolved with that slum. Because for each slum you demolish, you're demolishing a socio-economic system.
Absolutely.
As well. And it's also a system of social coherence, you know, so you're also demolishing. So all of these has to be taken into consideration. And let's revisit their resettlement. What is their resettlement story? Have they been resettled? Did they move? Did they not move? Did they do partial movement? And all of that. A lot of that has happened in the FCT. So this matter of informal settlements is an all-stakeholder
interest.
The minister, the area councils, the traditional chiefs, the communities must take ownership for it to happen. You know, because a lot of these places, people are living in very unsanitary conditions.
Thank you very much. Obviously, there's a direct link between poor urban planning and, you know, the issue of security. I wonder, what are the current vulnerabilities we face within the FCT today?
Security vulnerabilities. I'll give a quick analogy.
Okay.
The FCT, so with the way the FCT is shaped, you find that the Federal Capital City is witnessing a growing crime rate. And these are specialized crimes. Kidnapping being one of them, and even armed robbery being another. Because these are crimes that play on fear and self-preservation. So you can imagine somebody trying to kidnap in a popular area in Buhari, a densely populated area in Buhari. That person is very unlikely to escape, because one driver would block the road with a truck, leave the truck and run, right? Another one has blocked the other road with a truck. The bikes have lined up and left their bikes. But in the Federal Capital City, value placed on lives are higher. So people would naturally, once that gunshot sounds, everybody shuts their door. So they play on that element of fear and self-preservation. That play is different in the Federal Capital City than in the satellite towns and area councils. So that kind of crime is going to be increasing in the capital city unless we begin to figure out where are the criminals staying.
Where are they staying?
With that dynamics playing out, the crime in terms of organized and specialized crimes will be a lot more in the areas where fear and quality placed on each person's life, self-preservation dynamics take a higher stake. Yeah. You know, that petty crimes, a lot of petty crimes will be increasing in where people live and all that. But very rarely would you find that people will want to commit crimes, visible, open crimes, where they live. And so I'm not saying that that's the only place where people live. They live outside the city and all that. But the places where once the development is poor, right, people can hide.
Yes.
And we do not have a database system within the FCT that says who you are, where you are, what you are, where you've been, and all of that. We do not have that. We don't have the digital infrastructure, you know, data infrastructure for the FCT should be different from that of every other state in the country. You know, we should know who you are, where you are, what you do, your typical trajectory or your typical itinerary during the day. We should know. We should be able to see it. The FCT government has been trying to do cashless Nigeria like forever. Why not make sure that it happens in the FCT? We have a lot of people who are in the informal sector, informal economic sector. Let's look at the strategic interventional expenditure that government can do to make sure that everybody is captured in the formal economy. That way you know how money is even moving within the FCT. And of course, government will benefit a lot. Government will benefit a lot because from formal economy, you draw a lot of value for FIRS and all of that, and even for developmental levies. But so FCT needs to be different. Absolutely. It needs to be different.
Absolutely. Now, from the way you've answered all these questions, obviously you've answered them from a very developmental perspective. And I think this is where we perhaps want to emphasize the fact that it is important for us to put infrastructures in place.
Yes.
But that we must always tie them to some kind of developmental project for the long term.
Yes.
I think that is important to say. But for my last question to you is this. As we wrap up, I want you to imagine you're wearing the hat of a special advisor or technical advisor to the Honorable Minister of the FCT. What would be your top 3 policies that can really, you know, give that 80-20, if you like, Pareto principle for serious impact for the FCT?
Okay, so first will be that infrastructure that allows economies to connect and overlap transport. High visibility, high impact. Public transport needs to be prioritized, needs to become the priority of the minister of the FCT city state, ministry state. Public mass transit. And there's so many successful examples that the FCT can leverage on. A lot of us have also worked on these kind of projects. And we've been talking to the FCT about it. Public mass transit needs to be the case because we do not have a transport system. Roads are getting choked, traffic to come into the city. And just like I was saying earlier, the city fills up in the morning, empties in the late afternoon, fills up again at night for nightlife.
Right.
Development imbalance, which means people are coming back in the evening to have fun.
Right.
And under the cover of darkness, a lot of things also come into the city. So our leaders should not wonder where the crime is coming from. is the way the city has been structured.
And I like you say that we shouldn't wonder, because
we shouldn't
the
wonder.
system will deliver what it is designed to deliver.
Absolutely. So if we've failed to plan, that means we have planned to fail. And we're getting the dividends of that failure to plan by what happens in the city. In the public transport system, muggings, robberies, carjackings is happening. So that's it. That's on the transport.
Yes.
Then
That's your first
that's
policy.
my first
Second
point.
policy.
Second policy is land reform and housing. A lot of the land allocations within the city, within the city is a lot better. Within the area councils and satellite towns do not have titles. And the titling system is also a long, laborious process where C of Os take forever to get issued and all that. If we do not reshape all that space, we're locking down a major part of the economy. Titling for land is a way of unlocking the economy. Right. You can go for development loan, you can get mortgage loan to build, you can get partners to buy in and co-develop with you. But we don't have title, and nobody knows when your title is going to come out. It could be 2 years, it could be 1 year, it could be 1 week. If you know somebody, it could be the next 10 years. You finish paying for your CFO and it has not come out. So those are the kind of things. And then even the treatment for titling in the area councils and satellite towns is a lot different from what you get within the city. Okay. So there's this connection, the area council land, FCT, everything should be harmonized, and let's have the same efficiency that Aegis has. The Aegis keeps aspiring to get to. Let's have it apply across the entire FCT. Okay. Unlock the economy. And then, of course, the third one will be smart governance. Cities are moving towards smart governance. No one is doing all this plenty paperwork again, booking appointments and all of that, seeking engagements or doing things with government. Transactions or projects. Smart governance, go in the way of smart governance. So permit me to sneak in a fourth one. So, and this applies to the whole country, but we're talking FCT, so the FCT should take a cue from this. We have, as a country, this fixation on the GDP. And the GDP relates to the segment of the economy that is captured in the formal space. And the bulk of our economy as a country is informal, is in the informal space. So I'll love to reiterate this, that government should think deeply. Let's think about, one, government is leaving money on the table. If the bulk of your economy is informal, and then you have a 25%, I would not assume a 25% capture in the formal economy, and we treat that as our 100%. That means we're leaving 75% on the table.
Absolutely, uncaptured.
Uncaptured, unmapped, untapped, So government should forget this 10% or 15% that we are now focusing all our needs as a country on trying to milk. Technically, the government is milking everybody dry in that formal sector, while a lot is happening out there. Let's look at its strategic, innovative, interventional expenditure that government can do to move this bulk of people. And then we can now have that easy tax, that model, the theory, the game of numbers, where you're getting 10 or 100 naira from 100 million people.
That's correct.
As against 1 million from 2 people or 5 people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Going full scale.
Going full scale.
Absolutely.
Formalization of the economy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then that way, in fact, people will even have pride that they are paying their taxes.
Absolutely.
You know, and because they are paying their taxes, because it becomes a chicken and egg situation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Because they are paying, sometimes people will tell you, oh, I'm not paying tax because what is the government doing for me?
Yes.
But if we're able to capture people and they are paying their taxes, no matter how small, like we're just saying, economy of scale, right? People can actually feel some level of pride to say, hey, I paid my taxes last month, I'm going to be paying again this month. That sense of contribution to, you know, to nation building. Kazeem Sanusi, it has been a pleasure talking to you, but one thing I noticed from all our conversation is we need to get into that serious developmental space.
Yes.
Serious developmental work. That needs
Developmental mindset.
Developmental
knowing
mindset,
that all development and growth is incremental and cumulative.
That's right.
You cannot, once you don't have that mindset, you have not started.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because things are always shifting.
Yes.
And when things shift, we need to readjust and, you know, harness some information from that and say, what are we learning from this? And based on that learning, we can then...
We're adjusting, adapting, iterating.
Yes,
and all
yes,
that.
absolutely. It has been a pleasure talking
Thank you
to
very much. Really good chatting with you too.
I really enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.